What if every experience, every hardship, every obstacle was given to you, not to break you, but to mold you and strengthen you? What if the center of your suffering was actually the key to ultimate health? And what if your own pain was meant to be the catalyst for your greatest purpose? Welcome to Buddha Belly Life, empowering purpose, mind to microbiome. Welcome to the Buddha Belly Life podcast. This is Coach Britt, and I am so excited today to be sitting here with my guest, Dr. Larry Weiss, PhD. So with over 2 decades of groundbreaking contributions in the microbiome and life science, Larry has continually spearheaded innovative developments in clean, safe, and non-toxic skincare products. Larry's leadership at Symbiome involves directing a team of esteemed PhD microbiologists and dermatologists, driving cutting-edge research on the microbiome's crucial role in maintaining optimal skin health. You guys, his academic credentials consist of a medical degree from Stanford University and a BS in biochemistry from Cornell University. Notably, Larry's extensive experience as a lecturer and panelist in various conferences, coupled with over 20 patents and publications across chemistry, electrophysiology, clinical pharmacology, and the microbiome, solidify his authority in the field of skincare innovation. Welcome to the podcast, Dr. Larry Weiss.
Thank you very much for inviting me to join you. Just one correction, I don't have a PhD, I have an MD.
Oh, an MD. Okay, well we had the PhD right there. So MD. Thank you for correcting that too, because that is a worth notating. Hence why we're calling him, Dr. Larry Weiss, MD, right? Yeah, because everyone has the doctor, but when you got an MD, I mean, you better get credit for that.
Yes, I appreciate that.
Yeah. So Dr. Larry, this is so great. So we're going to get into a little bit about the product stuff in a minute, the company that you're with, and weigh in on that a little bit. To start off, can you tell me a little bit about really how you got here? How you got working and innovating in microbiome research, what got you into even the medical field? Can you give us some of this kind of an idea of your background and what brought you to this place?
I started off my career as a natural products chemist, organic chemist at Cornell, and then came out to Stanford for medicine. Medicine is really the only scientific education which is broad. Everything else gets very narrow. But in medical school, there's the entire range of sciences to choose from. Graduate there, did internal medicine, intensive care medicine. I'm board certified an anesthesiologist. I've been an academic. And right around the mid-90s, any of us who was paying attention noticed that there was a growing burden of diseases that were all inflammatory in nature. Mm-hmm. And as the entire medical care system oriented around the treatment of these diseases, some of us started wondering why there were so many of them. Why was this explosion? And it has tripled, by the way, in the past 30 years. Right around 2000, we started developing the tools to sequence DNA. We got very interested in our favorite subject, that would be us. So there was the Human Genome Project earlier, and that accelerated the tools by which we could start reading DNA and RNA. And what we discovered when we pointed them at us, that a whole lot of what we thought of as us was actually microbial. And I get asked oftentimes, what is the microbiome? And the standard answer you'll hear from people is, those are the microbes that live on you and in you. And that's not a very satisfying answer for most people for a couple of reasons. One of which is it's invisible. Mm-hmm. So we're asking you to form a concept around this incredibly complex abstraction, which is invisible, and that is usually the purview of religion. Secondly, most people's relationship with the microbial world was adversarial. We assumed they were trying to get us sick or kill us. That's not true either. And then they would go to Google, Dr. Google, and ask questions, and they'd come up with an entire range of answers and come away frustrated. Let me make it simple. Your microbiome is as much you as any other organ system, your heart, your lungs, your brain. It's just you can't see it. And it is much older than we are. This is a microbial planet. Microbes have been around for 3 to 4 billion years. Animals showed up about 600 or 700 million years ago. Primates maybe 7 million, and Homo sapiens, us, call it 3 to 400,000. What made this very interesting is now suddenly that we could see this as a scientist. Suddenly it opened up an entire world of possibility of things that might be influencing our health, resulting in this growing burden of inflammatory disease. I was the founding chief medical officer at a company called BIOME, and we introduced the first Skin Microbiome product, and that was a product called Mother Dirt. And Mother Dirt was based on the assumption, the hypothesis, that there was a bacteria that used to live on us, and it converted ammonia, which is found in our sweat, into nitrite and nitric oxide. And when we lost that microbe and we lost that particular contribution, it had health consequences. Well, if you want to prove that hypothesis, you need to find a group of humans who still live as hunter-gatherers or foragers and look at their microbiome. That's very easy to say and very difficult to do. Through this, I developed a relationship with an essentially uncontacted community of hunter-gatherers in the Amazon. And this company has sponsored 3 academic research expeditions. And we have created the most comprehensive survey of what their microbiome looked like. Now, the thing that makes them interesting is they have no inflammatory disease whatsoever. Mm-hmm. Hunter-gatherers, this is how we spent 99% of our time on the planet as a species. We were creatures of scarcity. We were foragers. We lived at the carrying capacity of our ecosystem. And our microbiome was way more complicated, and we had no inflammatory disease. So what we have done with this company is we've created the most comprehensive survey, not just of who these bugs are, but what they are doing in a biologically intact community of Homo sapiens who live a disease-free life. The utility of this, it gives us a reference point. It's a evolutionary biology perspective which allows us to look at who we are today and who we used to be and see what the difference is. And with this difference, we have found a way. We can't put the bugs back. The bugs we lost, you could go live in the Amazon, and in a couple of weeks, you would have much of them back. We'd probably die because we're not very good at living as hunter-gatherers. We have developed a way of building precision ferments. Fermentation is the connective tissue of biology. So we have built precision ferments that fill in the gap for what we have lost. And that's the big hypothesis behind what we've done here. We've started with skin, but we have data for the gut, we have data for the mouth, and we are going to use the same sort of an approach. This is what we looked like when we were intact and healthy. This is what we look like today. It's an incredibly complex system, but once you know what it looked like when it was working, you have a tool with which you can start creating things to fill in the gap.
That's amazing. And so I'm going to just kind of re-articulate a little bit of what you just said. And so you guys, for those of you who are listening to a doctor speak who does keynotes, I love when I get my keynoters on here too, because I can always tell. I can let you guys have such a beautiful platform presence when you talk about your topics. It's like so much less work on me. But so what he's talking about here is that they had to seek a colony of untouched species. Essentially, they had to go find people that weren't around our standard American diet, around all our chemicals, living in this modern world that we're living in, to see what a primal, gut microbiome and body microbiome, skin, etc., actually looks like on people. And like he said, these guys had no inflammatory disease. And we know that inflammation is linked to every single disease out there, and it has strong links to the gut biome. So this is incredible findings. What it shows is that this primal way of living throughout nature, without the chemicals, on real food, with constant movement, with community, with the things that we know, provided a stellar biome on all fronts, gut, skin, etc., to research so that we can try to strive for something closer to what that looks like so that we can hope to have the health benefits that they have without the inflammatory disease. Is that correct, doctor?
That's pretty good. Okay, I was effective. And again, a couple of things here that are actually really important. The first one is that this growing burden of disease. We now have the opportunity to do something we never did before. Everything that I was trained to do and that everyone in medicine trained to do, and also what we do with all our interventions is we fix things that are broken. Mm-hmm. So you'll go to your doctor or someone like you and we'll go, these are the broken things and these are the tools we have to fix them. But we now have an opportunity to do something we never could do before. We can now try to find a way to restore health. But if we're going to do that, we need to come to an agreement on what we mean by health. Yes. So if I ask you or anyone else today what health is, the response will be some version of, I'm not sick yet that I know about. But from an evolutionary biology standpoint, health is the resilience in response to stress. Mm-hmm. They bend, we break. We become incredibly brittle. So here's an interesting way to think about it. You know the game Jenga, all these blocks in a tower.
All too well.
So if we built a tower and each block was a unit of genetic or metabolic machinery, and we took the human holobiont, that's a word that refers to us and all of our microbes as a unit. And we took all that genetic material. If it was 300 blocks tall, one of the blocks would be Homo sapiens, and all the rest would be microbial. Now, during the course of evolution, that's how it evolved, and the tower was very resilient. But when we moved out of living as foragers and we developed agriculture, see, that changed something fundamentally. They sampled their entire ecosystem for things to eat. Once you started growing things, you started eating just that. As soon as we could grow wheat was breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And that narrowed down our exposure. And when we did that, we lost genetic material. So you pull blocks out. Tower still stands. What has it lost? Resilience. Mm-hmm. And in today's world, it's accelerated to the point where so many of the blocks are missing. 80%, we have lost 80% of the diversity that was our evolutionary legacy. And that's who's there. If you look at the metabolic contribution, 25% of that is gone, we don't have it at all. Another 45% is diminished. And so all those blocks are missing. Tower still standing. What has it lost? Resilience. And now stress, the environmental stress, all of these chemicals that are in us. You know, you've just seen recently about microplastics. Those of you who haven't seen the movie Dark Waters, will see a perspective on these perfluorocarbons that are around us. We live in a soup of chemicals that never existed anywhere on the planet until the last 100 years. So our resilience has gone down and our stress has gone up, and it's not a big surprise that one of the things we're seeing is an explosion of inflammatory disease. And I want to be clear, cancer, heart disease, diabetes, metabolic syndrome, degenerative joint disease. If you look at these hunter-gatherers, they don't sunburn. And that's not a melanin issue. Even dark-skinned people can sunburn, and they don't get skin cancer. They don't, in fact, as far as we can tell, they don't get cancer at all. All of these diseases have an inflammatory component in them. And so we are now living in an age of inflammation. Now, if we take our same approach, which is, here's a disease, what can I do to fix it? We continue to take a complex system we don't understand particularly well and manipulate it. As I said, we're doing something very different, which is, I now have a reference point of what it looked like when everything was working. And rather than trying to figure out all of these mechanisms, we just say, this is what it looked like, how much of that can we restore, and what happens when we restore that? And almost all of it is microbial. And so this is a very general approach. As I said, we've started with skin on this, but you bring up diet. And it's a huge component. Let me tell you what we've learned about skin, and we can see how this might translate into diet. So everything that has been reported in the scientific literature and discussed about our skin microbiome is the component of it that is actually engrafted into our skin. So when you're born, it starts then, and sometime early in childhood, all of the bacteria and yeast and fungi that are going to live on your skin, they are there. And they will accompany you the rest of the way through life, although the relative abundance of each species will change when we hit puberty and the hormones kick in, and depending on what we put on our skin. The piece that we lost is an entire ecology called biofilm. It's an environmental biofilm. And every animal who's ever lived, and every plant, and every surface is harmonized by this biofilm. Although we can't see it, we live in a bioaerosol. We live in a built environment, so it's a very thin one. They live in the most diverse biologic environment left on the planet in the Amazon, and so theirs is very rich. When we looked at what that piece that we lost, that environmental biofilm, did for our health, there were three big pieces. The first one is it harmonized us with the place where we were living. Those were the bugs that solved every problem necessary to live there. The second one is we live in an oxygen environment and we're bathed in ultraviolet. Bacteria solved this problem 2.7 billion years ago, and they didn't solve it with sunscreen. Okay. It's energy. They absorb this energy, and it drives the third big process where they have all of these metabolic processes that make important things that we need, many of which we don't make for ourselves. And since we've lost that, all we have is the engrafted piece. And the engrafted piece, without that film on there, we're oxidizing. We are getting the oxygen and the ultraviolet, and that damages us. And we're also starving because we don't have that metabolic support. The piece that we do have, which is the engrafted part, has two very big jobs. It does a lot more than this, but there's two big ones. One of which is it so fully occupies the ecosystem, it's called colonization resistance, so that there isn't a foothold for someone else to come in. And the second one, and this is important, it communicates directly with our immune system, so it can call out our immune system to respond if there is a breach. But that's all we have left. So when we look at our skin microbiome, what we're looking at is about 20% of what was our evolutionary legacy. And it's not so much the numbers, it's that we do not have this protection from ultraviolet and oxygen, and we do not have all this nutrition from the metabolic support from it. If you look in the gut, most of us are inflamed in our gut as well because of the way that we have changed our diet, and it's changed that ecology and ecosystem. What we've done with this company is we've started with skincare, but we also have the tools to take the same approach into the gut. That's the next frontier for us.
Do you have a desire for fulfillment? Does helping people tap into their own health mentally, emotionally, and physically fire you up? Do you believe in the impact of the gut microbiome on overall wellness? You may be an HWCA coach. For more info on our cutting-edge health coach trainings, visit hwcacoach.com.
This is amazing. And so when you are looking at the skin, because remember, guys, you've heard me say this before. Any of my students and maybe some of my listeners have heard me say this, but they call the skin, we call the gut the second brain. We call the skin the second gut, the external gut. I think, I don't know how you feel about that, but a lot of people don't understand that, and they're so connected. The GI, the gut, and the skin. That often when we see people, kids with psoriasis, skin issues, any kind of thing that's showing on the skin, we always say, let's talk about your gut. That's why we train so many beauticians and people in the skincare world now, because there's a connection. But your skin is so similar to your gut, right? Like it's somewhat semi-permeable, and then it's got these microbes that are supposed to be there to protect, because it's your forefront of defense. Like before something's going to get in your bloodstream and get in your body, like this is what's protecting you. So you want to weigh in on that too?
Exactly. What you said is exactly true. First of all, there's something really important you said in there, and I think it's the word we need to think about, which is connection. Here is the big message from the microbiome. Everything is connected, and those connections are ancient and microbial. And your skin and your gut are continuous. There isn't a boundary. If you look at it, the opening to your gut, which is your mouth, and your skin, there's a transition phase for there. The same way in an ecosystem, there's a transition from land to the water. And so when we think of these as separate units, that's an abstraction with no basis in reality. And it goes further than that. When we think of our microbiome as separate from us, that's also an abstraction with no basis. It doesn't exist without us, and we don't exist without it. So what we're doing is we are applying the sequence in which we discovered these things as a property of them. That's not really the case. Our skin microbiome, the rest of our microbiome, it's continuous. Wait, it gets bigger. Our community in which we live, the people we're around with, even if we're isolated, we are harmonized. There was just a very interesting paper published by a group that looked at people on the space station. If you want to see the ultimate disconnection from the biology from which we emerged, those are the people. And they came down, and when they came back, their microbiome was severely diminished, and they were sick. The connection between us and each other, between us and the microbiome. One other thing I want to say here, because I think this is really important. The biggest myth about the microbiome out there right now is that we know anything about it yet. Okay? It's still very early. It's insanely complex. The tools with which we use to study it are better than they have ever been, but they're worse than they will ever be. And here is a completely non-controversial statement. At some point, everything we eat, everything we put on our skin, our agriculture, and probably everything about our healthcare is going to be transformed by things that we still have yet to learn about our relationship with this global microbial continuum in which we evolved. And that information is going to start transforming some of our, not just the things we know, but then this is where it gets really interesting, our perspective. You see, we've taken ourselves out of context. Let me illustrate this for you. I'm going to give you a word. I want you and your listeners all to call forth an image in your head. Don't tell me what it is. Ready? Here's your word, nature. Tell me when you've got an image. You got any people in that image?
No.
No. I've done this in front of thousands of people. I've done it in front of people. I've done it in front of 4 or 5 times and no hands go up. This is what has happened. We think of ourselves as apart from rather than apart from the biology that we are deeply immersed in. And I will tell you that my suspicion is so much of the things that have led to the decisions we've made, which have brought us to this place where there's so much inflammatory disease, have their basis in that. So we think of our food as separate from us, but our food is a continuum, the things we put in our skincare. And what that means is we should just be very circumspect about what we do. So, for example, inflammatory disease, I told you, has tripled in the past 30 years. Okay, so 6 out of 10 of us are on medication for one inflammatory disease, 4 out of 10 for 2, and there's a new diagnosis called multiple chronic conditions. And 25% of Americans, men, women, and children, qualify for this diagnosis, 1 in 4 children has eczema. Follow that child for 5 years, and 90% will be carrying an inhaler. And have one or more food allergies, and I know you did a piece on this, and the incidence of autism spectrum disorder is exploding as well. All of these things are symptoms of a fundamental change in the way that we see ourselves in the world in which we live. So here's what I would urge all of us, which is before we decide to buy something or eat it or ask yourself, what do we know and do we need it? And try to make better decisions. Because the short answer today is we don't know enough. But what we do know is that it's much more complicated than we appreciate. Our knowledge is finite and our ignorance is going to be infinite. So coming back to what we've done with this company, we've built products with incredibly simple ingredient sets, and those ingredients have a long, long history of being part of our human symbiome. The word symbiome means all the co-located, co-evolving organisms, and you can define what you're looking at. It can be as small as, something under a microscope, or it can be as large as the entire globe. But think of ourselves as a community, and our symbiome. What are the things that we are willing to introduce into that? And here's why it's exciting that we're talking, because women make 80% of the buying decisions. And you guys are reading labels now. 15 years ago, that was not the case. So read the labels, ask good questions, be skeptical. When you see certainty, be skeptical. It's still too early. We still don't actually know enough. When someone says, I know what the answer is, their certainty makes me certain that they're probably wrong. Because we're still working on this and we need to do it together. We all need to collaborate to get healthy together. I created these products to start a conversation. They work. We have a cream that has 3 ingredients. One is a fermented oil. You take plants that are sustainably harvested from the rainforest. You let them ferment anywhere from weeks to months, and then you separate the oil and use those oils that are rich in all sorts of things that we no longer have, the metabolic products of the bacteria that we no longer have. And then we were able to formulate this with water and another microbial ferment into a moisturizer and a cream. It restores. There's a gap analysis between what we used to have and what we have today, and this fills in some, not all of the gaps. But I want to start a conversation. What's different? Why is it different? How can I look for things that fit within this new concept of health, which is health is about reconnecting with the biology from which we emerged.
Wonderful. And I will say I tried the kit that you guys sent. I got to try it last night. And I am a mother. I have 6 kids between 3 and 14 right now, almost 4 and 14.
Whoa, okay.
Yeah, we're a blended family and we run multiple businesses and it's wild. And I'm obviously a massive advocate of health. So I'm way more diligent about tending to my internal health, my nutrition, my meal planning, my exercise. I stink at doing the self-care, anything. And I'm very minimalistic, and I appreciated so much how straight to the point, effective, and clean that these products felt, and how great they did feel, and how they really encouraged me to like do something for myself, which I obviously am not doing enough. But that it was so great. I love when you don't smell it. Like these overwhelming smells of perfumes and things. I'm trying to explain this to my kids. We have 3 girls and 3 boys. So we've got 3 little girls that want to smell pretty, that want to, have all the things that, they get from the family, the fluffy stuff. And I always try and explain to them that these smells, these candles, these lotions, these sprays, these things are chemicals, because I taught the coaches just recently, the average person, especially women, put about 160 some chemicals on their body every single day. And the compound load of all of that together like you said, is excessive stress, chemical and environmental stress. Dr. Jill Carnahan, she talked about that. She said our air that we're breathing and the stuff that's in our environment is actually our number one chemical stressor on our bodies. So to choose something, and especially something, I'm the kind of person that I would rather spend, reasonable money on less that is better quality, and I'm more minimalist like that, than all this junk that people want to buy, because they're getting gift cards to this place and that place. Like, buy the good stuff. And yeah, just to that point, I really am impressed with it. Actually, I read the labels. I'm going to, show it to some of my coaches that are crazy about their labels. I think they're really going to like it too. I was very impressed.
Thank you. That means a lot. And also, look, ideas can change behavior, but it's really hard. Products change behavior dramatically.
Mm-hmm.
We were just talking about this before the show. This thing here, our phones, are rewiring our brains as we're talking here. We can design products where health is a primary design parameter. Look, so many of the products, if you want to see the future of chronic disease in this country, walk down the center aisle of the grocery store.
Oh yeah,
we give away adverse side effects to the products that we know and love for free every day of the week. Mm-hmm. What is religion to us and to me in this company, what is so important is I want to make health a primary design parameter. Look, people buy and use products because they love the product, they love the way it makes them feel or look. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Once we know what health, from an evolutionary standpoint, what did it look like, we have the opportunity to restore that and do it through the products. The same way we're giving away adverse side effects for free, this company is giving away beneficial side effects with our products. And we're just getting started. It's going to get better and better because as the science progresses, this same reconnection, again, I'm essentially the only one who's ever put a live bacteria in the market with Mother Dirt. Very difficult, very expensive. And for most of what we need to do, we don't need that. We need what they did. So we're getting better and better at making products that are going to restore what we're missing and then determining how they work. This is, again, with the notion of connection, we are trying to connect with every customer in a way that we learn. We all learn together because health is not a property of an individual. It's a property of a community. Mm-hmm. And if we decide this is important, and again, why did I say about women making 80% of the buying decisions? Because you're reading labels now. Because you're deeply concerned about the fact that your children's childhood looks different than yours. I have 2 daughters, I have grandchildren, and they're constantly asking, is this product okay? And they don't like my answer, which is, we don't know, do you need it? And it's the right way to start looking at these. You can still have great products. There's an interesting study that was done, and it found the incidence of skin diseases of all sorts is increasing. And it's increasing fastest in the wealthy countries. Mm-hmm. And within those countries, it seems to be increasing fastest within the wealthy demographics. So I'm not going to tell you that I think that it is causing that. What I'm going to tell you is we can do better. We all deserve better. And everyone who works in this company is absolutely committed to advancing the science and to translating that into products which bring and restore the health that was our evolutionary legacy to everyone. And then to get it, to collect their stories and their experiences and use that as a tool to get better and better.
Mm-hmm. And education is really powerful. And like you said, restoring the health of our skin. So we talk about the protective layer of the skin. I know I was having a conniption through 2020 when we were pushing so much antibacterial, hand sanitizers and things all the time, instead of washing hands where we can. And, really trying to educate my kids on stuff like that. And But that protection of those bacteria, because they're our first line of defense. It's not just our skin, like you say, it's the organisms that live on it. And it's it's interesting to me that, yes, if we could shift kind of our perspective on how we see it, like protecting, or like you say, even restoring this beneficial layer. I mean, even on a superficial standpoint, and that may be what some women need to hear, that if you're restoring the microbes in the ecosystem on your skin, it will have more physical, impact on your look even of your skin. And that more chemicals is not better.
And look, there's an important lesson in this, which is, look, let's start with one of the things you said. Hands are different. We don't live as hunter-gatherers anymore, and we're deeply connected. We fly all over the world, and so hands are different. Hand washing is really important because you put your hands into parts of the world that you generally don't put other parts of your body, and then the next place they go is to your face. So good hygiene is absolutely important. As I said, we can't restore. People have been trying to engraft bacteria, healthy ones, into our skin microbiome, and no one has yet been able to do it sustainably. We can get them to stick around for a little while, but sooner or later, colonization resistance kicks them out. We can, if we know what they did, and this is what we're doing, restore what they were doing. But it is actually really important to recognize that this notion of a germ theory of disease, this is what we've all been taught, and the way that works is there's some bad actor, bacteria, maybe a mold, maybe a fungus, and that makes us sick, and we need to kill that bad actor with an antibiotic or an antifungal. And make no mistake, they can be absolutely life-saving in that situation. And that is the germ theory of disease. I want to advance a germ theory of health, which is much larger, which says what may have happened is we have diminished the resilience of our microbiome because we have lost them, which set in motion a series of events, of which the germ theory of disease is just the last. So going back to our Jenga metaphor, if we've already lost a whole bunch of the blocks, that is where we have lost the resilience. What we see as the disease, the germ theory of disease, is the last block or the last two blocks before it falls. But we can't see all the missing blocks because none of us have them. We've all lost them together. And so when we look at someone and say, well, they are healthy, we actually don't really know what these mean. There's only about 30 or 40,000 of these biologically intact, uncontacted, or we call them minimally impacted hunter-gatherers that we know of in this world. And you can't just show up in a village with an informed consent and have them put a thumbprint on a piece of paper and start studying them. There are ethical considerations in doing this, but they'd probably kill you if you do that anyway. But they need to survive. It is absolutely essential to all of us that they survive. And with climate change and all of this other things that are going on that are impairing them, most people don't believe they are likely to survive. They are our reference for what a healthy, biologically intact human looks like. See, evolution doesn't make a species with the burden of disease of industrialized Homo sapiens. We did that ourselves. And if we are going to try to understand what has changed and how to recover as much as we can and still live in a modern world, because time's arrow only goes in one direction, we need them to survive as a group. And everything that we have discussed here and everything thought about is an entirely new perspective on this. But the things that we can do today, the action items for your coaches to teach the people are: ask better questions, think critically. When you see something that seems too good to be true, do the homework, ask the right people. There's a general belief that scientists like myself, that the substance of our work are facts and immutable truths. That's not exactly correct. Here's what we do. We build a model, and we use the tools available to us to ask some questions and get some data, some evidence. And what we learn from that, if we're honest, we fix our model, And then we ask more questions, and it goes around and around and around. And the best that we can really hope for is that something that we think we know is a gross oversimplification of something that is so complex it's still beyond our imagination. And a lot of it is going to be wrong. That's how we learn. If someone presents something and says, this is a truth, this is an immutable truth, I'm very suspicious because I've been doing this for a long time and I've watched enough of them be part of the puzzle, but not the full puzzle itself. This part of critical thinking, when you buy products, when you decide what to do with your children, what to feed your children, what to feed yourself, just ask better questions. We need to build a community of people like yourself who are curious and think critically and can present, this is what we know today, this is how you make the best decisions. Look, the microbiome is going to change everything because of its complexity. We are now doing what's called systems biology, whereas everything that we have done before is, here's a molecule, here's what its binding site is, and this is the mechanisms of action. And I love that stuff. I come from that world, but it's just a piece of the puzzle. When you put the entire puzzle together, how do these pieces all fit together? We're still working on tools to do that. So a healthy skepticism.
Humility, really.
And humility is perfect. It's funny, I'm surprised I haven't said that, because it is our humility that will make us healthy and great. The willingness to take a new technology and scale it globally before we understand the unintended side effects on health, despite lots of examples of doing this, is something that we need to get better at managing these technologies before they, in fact, as we were talking about at the beginning of the call, don't actually make things better, make things more complicated, and they have unanticipated consequences. So again, our approach with everything we've done with our products is very limited data sets, biologically intact materials. There's only a few ingredients that are a specific chemical ingredient. Everything else is biologically intact materials that we have a long, ancient relationship with as a species. And we're trying to use those so we don't take them apart. When we take them apart, it assumes we know more than we actually do. And another thing you just said is, look, people like yourself, people who have used the products, and we hear from them all the time. As I told you, our our customer experience officer is a health coach, is that people can see the benefit quickly in the mirror. And this is important. You asked, one of the reasons we chose with skin is, you see, your skin is the biomarker for your health that you can see in the mirror every morning. And this is true, because on days where you feel good, you look better, and days where you don't feel good, maybe not so much. If we could look in the mirror in the morning and see our coronary arteries, we'd probably all eat differently. So yes. I can use the fact that you look in the mirror and it looks better as a way of sort of getting your attention, starting the conversation. What's different about this than that? How do I get more of this? Because this is working for me. And those conversations will go all sorts of places, but you know where they'll never go? Back before the conversation ever started. And if we can create an infection of healthy ideas and healthy ways of approaching the world in which we live, and build those into the products that we sell, this will help transform us in ways that I am counting on to improve health, because I'm not really in the skincare business, I'm in the health business.
So I do have a question for you about that too. I want to say to your point on all this. I have my oldest son. He's high functioning spectrum, and he is incredibly intelligent. He just built his first PC. He just teaches himself everything that's interesting to him. He's very into physics and all this stuff. Over my head, college level stuff. The kid just turned 13. And so he's going to be very successful, and he has a lot of ambition to do a lot of things. And I keep telling him, I go, Phoenix, I know that I'm just your mom and it doesn't like kick in yet, but if I can just get this in the back of your head, if you're going to innovate something and, and he's part of this tech world and he sees all the innovation and obviously the money that's made and the advances, right? Because everyone wants to have the next advancement in technology. I was like, if you can root yourself in the integrity of wellness and health, because we've gone so backwards in health compared to like what you talked about, our primal creation of existence. We've gone so backwards and we've done so many things to work against our own health that I feel if you can commit to innovating for health's sake and not in a gimmick way, but for health's sake, truly, that will be the tech of the future. And I think even if people don't realize that as a society, you'll set yourself apart. So like with you doing this with skincare, for example, okay, there's all of these different skincare companies saying this, and there's even skincare companies, which makes my blood boil a little bit, trying to ride the biome science on a light level, microbiome friendly or like, biome friendly, whatever. And there are these generic brands and it is not biome friendly. Like I have no idea, but they write it kind of like, organic-ish, but it's not certified, or natural, right? Labels on foods. So we as a people need to educate because we have to use discernment to figure out what is the worthwhile stuff and what isn't. But in that process, companies like yourself or anybody that's really innovating something, especially for the good of mankind and health, we are educators. So the more that people like you and are out there educating in this topic, the more it's going to shed light on those who cannot keep up and those who do not bring it to the table.
I couldn't agree more. Look, a couple of things. One is success stories are what drive these. We are the product of everything that we are exposed to. So if you live in a little tech silo, and that's what you see, but success stories in the life sciences that are inspiring. Right. I'm not the only one doing things like this. There's an entire community of microbiome scientists, most of them much younger than me, who are going to make the major breakthroughs. They're passionate, they're dedicated, and they're really excited about what they're going to find. And look, a lot of this is data science. A lot of this is that intersection. And, the notion, we tend to put things in buckets. Okay, this is technology, but in fact, science, nature, is not bounded by the petty distinctions of the academic departments in universities and medical schools. And the person who's going to change the field that I work in tomorrow doesn't work in my field today. And it is through connection and communication. So I would encourage him to, wherever you can see input from things that are really inspiring, and there's a lot of really interesting content on the Netflix, I forget the name of it, but the piece that our colleague Jack Gilbert was involved with on Netflix about your gut microbiome is excellent. It's inspiring. Inspired stories, people working on something that's really complicated but really interesting. And the second thing is I think we need to realign our values. As we talked about earlier, medicine has changed in that we've made, when I started, patient outcomes were the primary incentive. And it has changed over the years, and now we converted medicine from being a profession into being a business. And with that, we made incomes, corporate incomes specifically, the incentive more than patient outcomes. And we got exactly what we asked for. We now pay more and live shorter, sicker lives than every other developed country, and it's not even close. And similarly, we could well be raising the first generation of children that are going to live shorter, sicker lives than their parents. And if that's not enough to motivate people, I don't really know what it is. So people with, your son's type of capability. Now, there's so much more work to do. There's a lot of indication that again, you talk about the mind brain and the gut brain, you can order them any way you like. Everything is connected. So depression, autism, Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease. I'm guessing, but if I was a betting person, which I'm not, I would say that every single one of these has a microbiome component, if not as the primary component, at least as something that accelerates and exacerbates it.
Yeah.
And there's still so much interesting work to be done. The biological materials in our freezer from these expeditions and the researchers that will be working on this for generations. What you're seeing in the products we develop, this is the threshold of what we can do. So, encourage your son. We're parents of children. They will be inspired and driven by the engines of their interest. Model the behaviors, model the values. It's the best that we can actually do, but we need, I'm a pathologically optimistic skeptic. I know all the problems. I know many problems. I don't know them all, thank God. I know there's enough problems with this, but I am confident this next generation is smarter than we are. They know the things that we know, and then they know more. And that within that is a group of people who are going to be driven, inspired, and dedicated to help address some of these pieces. And I am privileged, and I tell this to all my other colleagues in the microbiome, we are privileged to be here at this time, at the very beginning of this transformative science, which is changing essentially everything we know about our biology. I see we're running late, so I might be finishing with this, but I want to use this. This is a parable that I have borrowed from David Foster Wallace. So these two young fish are swimming along, and an older fish comes swimming the other direction and says, "Hey boys, how's the water?" And they swim on for a little bit, and one looks at the other and says, "What's water?" Those two young fish are all of us. The water is this global, ancient microbiological continuum that is the planet Earth. And the voice of the older fish is this growing burden of inflammatory disease, which is trying desperately to get our attention while there is still time to do something about it. We're doing what we can here with this company. I have an incredibly dedicated team. Try the products. I urge you to ask questions. Ask good questions. Don't accept answers. Don't accept answers even from people like me or other people who seem to know a lot. As I said, our knowledge is finite and our ignorance is infinite. And there's a lot more that we need to understand. But we need to inspire this generation to continue to pursue that. So, 6 children, you've got a handful. Actually, I have more than a handful. A handful, and then what?
And I got a husband. That counts for like another 4 kids.
Yeah, I'm not going to disagree with that. But you've also, you've got a gift. And so how do we make the most of that? What do we do with the time that we have to make things better so our children and our grandchildren will not see the continued upswing of these diseases that in this country, we put about a quarter of our GDP into treating diseases. And again, we live shorter, sicker lives than everyone. We deserve better. And part of what I hope this podcast did is inspire people to try to do better, to develop the right sort of a perspective on the world in which we live and who we are and what needs to be done. And maybe someone listening to me today will make a huge breakthrough. That's what I'm counting on.
That's amazing. That's great, Dr. Larry. Can you give everybody maybe how can we find you? Do you have a platform that you like to teach on, or is it straight to some of your products and your passions? Where can we point this audience? I'm going to put it in the show notes as well, you guys, but.
That's a really good question.
I can get it after the show too, and I just put it in there because I know.
Yeah. I mean, I've given a number of talks, and those things are recorded. I've discussed a good deal of it here. My VP of Research, Dr. Julia Durak, and our team have submitted a lot of this work for publication in a peer-reviewed journal. There will be more and more of it coming out, but I urge, if you have any questions, if people have any questions, you can, through the website, you can reach out through, and I'll, what you're asking is actually very important.
Through Symbiome.com.
I'm going to find a way to address that. I can do better with that. That is the thing. I'll make that my homework. Anyone I've inspired here who has any questions, let's find a way to facilitate those conversations.
Well, and you're
thank you for asking.
A classic mind behind the do. You know, in a world where everybody's trying to get seen first, do later, you've been doing first, and so there's nothing wrong with that. It's excellent. It's showing, it's coming to fruition for you. So
I am very, very fortunate, as I said, to be here in this time, to be able to make this contribution to something that I truly believe is important for all of us.
Yes. Amen. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Larry, and you guys, thank you so much for joining us. And you can check out more in the show notes on these amazing products and more of Dr. Larry Weiss's work.
Thank you for joining us for another empowering episode of Buddha Belly Life. For more information on gut health and mindset resources, visit buddhabellylife.com. And remember, heal yourself and then empower others to do the same.